Welcome back, and joining me with more insight on the day's trade is Anthea Gardner from Cartesian Capital. Thank you so much for your time, Anthea. What have you made of trading in the markets today? Because the JSE is in a pretty good mood, especially those PGM miners. We've seen the newly, I don't know, say named minted company Valterra flying with a surge of about more than 10% on the day. Quite interesting, because as those PGM miners are flying, we've had Jubilee saying that they're selling their PGM operation. So what have you made of trading today?
Hi, Zanati. Yeah, so pretty decent, solid performance from the equity market. You know, we had a little beat on expectations in the current account deficit, narrowed slightly, sorry, for the first quarter, you know, 0.5 from an expected or close to 0.7 in previous, which is about an effective 15 billion rand. And I think what makes this extra special is that during that time, the rand was relatively strong at 18.50 on average for those 3 months. You know, it's only in April after the first quarter that the rand's weakened to 1977. I don't know if you'll remember that, against the dollar, when we all started panicking, thinking it was going to 20. And then when the number came out, the currency definitely liked the number, because it strengthened to 1770 from 1785. I see it's back at about 1775 now, so nice and strong.
Yeah.
So our bonds, though, didn't, you know, I can't say it was the number, the current account deficit, that drove the bonds. I think our bonds weakened slightly today. And you know, we're of the opinion at Cartesian that the 10-year trading below 10% is a bit optimistic. So we were expecting it to weaken. We bought some puts. And we think it'll weaken a bit more going into the next couple of weeks. I don't think the macro for South Africa is quite as strong as this rand and where our bonds are suggesting.
Okay.
So I know it's not a great thing to hear. You know, business confidence came out pretty horrible for the second quarter, from 45 to 40. Previous was 45. Now it's at 40. And again, I think that's just really on the back of South Africa-US relations, the logistics problems that we're expecting, supply chain problems we're expecting from these trade wars.
Yeah.
And actually, you know what was really interesting? I saw the ECB cut rates today by 25 basis points. So this is the 8th time in a year that they've cut, right? It's like almost crazy. And what was interesting to me is their reasoning. So they kind of, if I can call it that, their headline reason for cutting rates was to strengthen the economy against tariff wars, which is exactly the opposite reason our central bank gave in March why they were not cutting interest rates.
Okay, that's interesting.
Because they were worried about the impact of tariffs. You know, so
yeah.
I mean, look, give it to our MPC. They cut the last meeting.
Do you know where I feel like Trump wishes he was president in Europe? Because he's been saying that Paul is too late, he needs to cut interest rates, and that Europe has cut so many times. So I am sure the envy in his face right now. All right, well, let's go into some of the other news that have came out today. Of course, we haven't gotten any kind of detail on the call between Trump and Xi Jinping in China. Hopefully, we will get that soon as well, so that we can dissect really the way forward. But on the JSE, we had Alphamin. I know Alphamin usually has like big swings in its share price movements. Today, I think it was down about 3%. And this is after an announcement that there was an exchange of hands in the majority shareholder. Talk to me about that company. I never actually really talk about this tin company.
I don't know if investors know what to make of this news. You know, in other words, I think investors don't know what to make of this news. So Tremont is selling their holding and to International Resource Holding, which is a Abu Dhabi-based mining company. And that'll make them the majority shareholder at 56%. So it's not like Alphamin's getting any cash in from this deal specifically. And I guess the hope is that IRH will be able to optimize kind of supply chain and, upstream and midstream assets. So, yeah, even I can't give you a definitive answer. Like, would I have, if I held these shares, which I don't, would I have bought more or sold them on this news? Really difficult to say. And also, the transaction hasn't been approved.
Okay.
You still need that. It needs to go through the regulatory process.
Yeah, this is a very, very interesting one. And as you rightfully note, it's not that they're getting any shares. It really just is just an exchange of the majority shareholder. Well, let's get to your stock pick for today. Anthea, what are you picking?
I feel a bit silly because the share ran so hard today, but I'm going with Sibanye-Stillwater. It was over 10% when I last checked. So it really has surged on platinum and palladium spot prices today. But what makes Sibanye particularly interesting is its meaningful exposure to gold. So gold accounts for 28% of Sibanye's revenue, or did last year anyway. And it produces at $2,100 an ounce, which makes it quite an expensive producer because the global average is about $1,600. But with gold at $3,300 an ounce, and I think it'll stay there for a while longer, Sibanye is really kind of making much better margins. And there's this kind of leverage idea that if the gold price increases by 10%, then Sibanye sees a 33% rise in margins. You know what I'm saying? Okay. So from 3,000, a 10% increase to 3,300 translates quite nicely actually for Sibanye. Of course, the flip side is that the downside leverage is equally harsh. But it's a company that has struggled a bit, and so really I think profitability was down sharply. Adjusted EBITDA was up 89% year on year. So at the last result, so I think that it's not so much a turnaround as I think for the next couple of months at least it'll take advantage of the higher commodity prices that we've seen.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time and for your insights on what has moved investors' money today, Anthea. Really appreciate it. That was Anthea Gardner from Cartesian Capital.